Hi, I'm Greg Zorian, third generation master barber. Today we're here in my barber shop, and what we're going to do is a pretty interesting transformation today for our model. He has previously had an undercut, as you can see. We're shaved pretty close, all the way up just above the temple area. And what we're going to do is he's going to grow out underneath, and we're going to comb the top completely forward, and we're going to do a version of a modified faux hawk. And we're going to style it all straight forward with a dry look, and we're going to use a heavy, thick paste to do that. So what I'm going to demonstrate today is how we're going to go about blending short hair to long hair. We're going to layer the top. He has a pretty bad cowlick in the back here, so we're going to have to figure out how to blend this in the back here to the underneath area. It might take a few haircuts to get to that point, but we're going to do the best we can. And what we're going to do is we're going to completely style it forward and up in the front, and we're also going to add a lot of texture to it. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to layer the top in pretty good. We're going to take quite a bit off the top, and then we're going to go from there. And then around the outline of the haircut, because I want to leave the hair heavier on the sides to blend to the top, we're just going to do a real low 1 finger width taper around the outline of the haircut. So to begin, I'm going to start on the top. I'm going to get my center guide. I'm going to elevate the hair straight up from the forehead here, and we're going to take about 2/3 of it off. I want to make sure we get a good section there, and I'm not going to cut past my center knuckle because I don't want to cut my finger. And then I'm going to take very small sections. So I'm using what's called a traveling guide to cut the top, which means I never let the hair go. I don't drop it and resection it. I always have the previous guide in my fingers. So I put the comb in at a 45-degree angle. I rotate the comb, and that creates the pressure so it holds onto the hair. And then we lift it up. And then we're taking small sections so you can see right through to your guide. And then we're just going to follow that all the way to the back. The more sections you take, the smoother your haircut's going to be. Because every time we make a cut, we create a line of demarcation, and we don't want to see lines in the haircut or scissor marks. Especially with lighter colored hair, you're going to see it very easily. So you want to take very small sections. So again, the smaller and more sections you take, the more accurate your haircut's going to be. So now as we get towards the back, what I want to show you is because he does have that cowlick back there, we want to leave it a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is that traveling guide is going to become stationary. So what that means, instead of moving the guide farther and farther back, I'm going to keep it exactly where it is, and I'm going to pull the hair up to it. And I can see my guide right there. And then we're going to cut that hair off in the back. And then not cut past the center knuckle. And then we can drop the hair. I'm going to comb it back over. And then I'm going to start again from the beginning with a section on either side. Doesn't matter, whatever you're comfortable with. You can go to the right, you can go to the left. I'm just going to pick up from the right. So his hair does have a naturally forward growth pattern. So if I comb it forward, it's much easier to pick up. And then I can find that guide I have from the center. So now we're going to have two guides. We're going to have a center guide and our traveling guide. And then we're just going to take very small sections like we did in the center. So now you should be able to see it pretty clearly. We have our center guide right there, and then we have our previous guide underneath. So this way you're never going to get lost on a haircut. And now we'll spin them around again so you can see what I'm going to do in the back. That traveling guide becomes stationary. And this works for all haircuts, business haircuts, my hairstyle. You don't want to take the hair too far back because then it's going to stick up in the back. Nothing worse than having that piece of hair sticking up in the back. Okay, so now we're going to keep going here until we get rid of these long ones. And for this particular haircut, what I like to say is there's two different shapes for haircuts. We either have a square shaped, which would be more the business cuts, similar to my haircut, And this, where it's going to be blended, is going to be more contoured shaped. So instead of keeping my fingers parallel to the floor, I'm going to round them slightly as I work my way down to the temple area, or the round of the head area, also called the parietal area. So you just want to develop a rhythm, and then you can do this pretty quickly, so you never have to drop the hair. And then that traveling guide becomes stationary, and we just keep repeating the process until we run out of hair. All right, so now we're going to do it again. There's still hair there. Now we want to blend it in, so now we're going to round it. And what we have here, again, we're developing that rhythm. It's a quick motion, 2 steps. Comb goes in at a 45-degree angle, you rotate it, and then you re-grip it. That's it. 2 steps. So you get your rhythm going, and it happens pretty quickly, and it's going to be very accurate. So what's going to happen is you're going to be done with your haircuts faster because you're taking less steps. All right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to come to the other side. We're going to come forward again. I'm going to find my center guide, which is right here. And we're going to work to the other side. So I want to make sure my fingers are parallel to the floor. So we get a nice even cut across the top until we get towards the corners, and then we're going to start to round our fingers a little bit. Okay, now we get to the back to allow for the cowlick, just like we've been doing. The traveling guide becomes stationary. We pull it all up to that stationary guide. Okay, you should be able to see it through. If you can't, when I comb the hair down, you can see it right underneath, right there. So re-grip to make sure I got it all. Now the temptation is to want to really grab that. Don't do that. That's past your center knuckle. You're asking for trouble. Anytime you cut past your center knuckle, we've all done it. I've done it plenty of times. Maybe you can even see the scar on my finger there. You're going to cut your finger. You might get away with it once or twice, but when you do cut your finger, it's going to be a bad one. So now I'm going to come to the other side. So instead of standing at an awkward angle like this, where my elbow is up way too high and my shoulder's up way too high and I'm leaning to the side, my body's out of alignment. I want to make sure my body's always in alignment, straight up and down, so I'm comfortable. I'm going to come to the other side. I'm going to comb the hair in the opposite direction. I'm going to drop my elbow, and I'm going to cut straight across again. So this way, my body and my posture is still in perfect alignment. So if you're cutting hair all day, 8 hours, 10 hours, some people 12 hours, even 6 hours, you want to make sure your posture is always good. So the other thing I like to do is, and I'll show you real quick once I'm done with this, I like to keep my work a half an arm's length in front of me. So what I mean by that is instead of cutting right in front of me, I'm leaning this way. What I do is I take a step to my left, so my elbow, I'm always at this angle where when I'm picking up the hair, it's a half an arm's length in front of me. I'm not standing directly in front of it like this, because then my elbow drops and my hand drops and I lose that really good grip on the scissor. All right, so now it's starting to shape up a little bit. So now what I want to do is, it's still pretty long in the front. So with most haircuts, you want the front, with these modern hairstyles, you want the front the longest part of the haircut. So I never want to just take the scissor and cut straight across, because once you make any kind of line, whether it be in a fade or on the front of the haircut, it's very difficult to get out. You want to make it soft and natural. So what I do is I come across and I angle my fingers down. So this is going to take some of the length out and layer it at the same time. So I'll do it once, and if I have to do it again, I'll do it again. So you can see there that took some of the length out right there. And then I'm just going to come back to the corner here, because I over-directed the corner too far over. There we go. So that meets up in the middle. So now we didn't even put any texture in it yet, and it already looks, it's already kind of doing what we want it to do before we even go and take some of that bulk out. So now I'm going to use, you can use either a scissor over comb technique or a clipper over comb technique to blend the sides to the top. So I'm going to start out with a longer shear, and I'm going to use a scissor over comb technique. I'm using a 7.5 inch shear. Now when I angle the comb, I want to make sure that the comb is angled out. So you can see there's more, the comb is closer to the center of the head than it is in the front. If I angle it in, I'm going to cut it too close in here. I'm going to cut into the front area, and we're going to create a hole. So we don't want to do that. So we want to make sure we have that angle. Again, posture, my shoulders are back, my elbow is up, and my work is a half an arm's length in front of me. And I'm going to take an imaginary line straight up in the air, and at the very end, I'm just going to angle it in slightly. And as I said before, we might not get that perfect blend yet because we're growing this out, but when we style it forward, it's going to blend. So I'm just going to work that all the way around. You can do this clipper over comb also if you're more comfortable with clipper over comb. My training was all scissor over comb. Like I said, I can certainly do a clipper over comb, but I find I can be more accurate and sometimes and faster with my scissor over comb technique. So sometimes people will say to me, wow, you're cutting really fast. So the only thing that's really happening fast is the scissor blade. So if you think about it, when you turn your clipper on, clippers operate anywhere from 5,500 to 14,000 strokes per minute. If you look at my comb is moving really slow. So I'm actually not really cutting fast. The comb is moving slow. So that goes back to what I said earlier in the video, where we're taking very small sections. And that way we're not leaving any scissor marks or lines of demarcation. We're blending it out. We don't want to use blending shears as a crutch. In fact, I don't even like to call them blending shears. I like to call them texturizing shears, thinning shears. Because even in your head, if you call them blending shears, then the tendency is going to be to lean on them as a crutch. Okay, so the underneath looks just about grown out enough where I think we can get a pretty decent blend in the back after we dry it. So with hair like this, which I didn't want to do, sometimes you can cut the crown off and then just blend it forward. So I always ask customers before I do that. An easy way of doing that is cutting the crown off, so then you just have to worry about the front. But before you go ahead and do that, you always want to check with the customer. It's a very popular hairstyle, but if it's not what the customer wants, it doesn't matter how popular it is if they don't like it. All right, so now we're just working our way around. So now I always have the previous guide in my comb from the previous section and the previous guide underneath. And then we're just going to finish towards the front. And then the same thing as I work my way towards the front, I want to keep the comb parallel to the side of the head. I don't want to round it in because we need that corner so he can have some style there. I don't want to cut into that corner. Okay, so now to complete the top, I want to go through and I want to add a lot of texture to give it a lot of style. All right, I just noticed a heavy spot here, so it seemed a little heavier on the right side than the left side. So when I pick it up, see how we have one length there, and we have a little bit of a point. Whenever you see a heavy spot, that means there's going to be whenever you see a heavy spot, that means when you pick up the hair, you're going to see a point. So I'm just going to go through with scissor over comb because the hair is shorter now and just get rid of that. So the comb is moving extremely slow. And if you rewind this and count how many times I open and close the scissor, we're somewhere around 20 to 25 times. So that's a lot of sections to pick up with your fingers. So it's much easier to do it this way. Okay, so that did it. Now we should have, there we go. And sometimes it's just always good to double check your work. So same thing on the opposite side. We got a little heavy spot there, so we're going to do it again. Same thing on the other side. We're going to round that comb just a little bit. Okay, that took care of the heavy spot on the other side. So what basically happened is I kept my fingers a little too parallel across the top instead of rounding them enough for this particular style. So now I'm going to take my texturizing or thinning shears. I want to make sure he doesn't have any hair on his face and brush him off. So now I'm going to go through, instead of picking it up with my fingers, I'm going to do it all scissor over comb. So I'm going to go through the center. I want to pick the comb up, or pick the hair up at 90 degrees, just like I did with my fingers. And we're going to come through, move the comb slow. Now I'm taking an imaginary line straight out this way. I don't want to round down in the back because it's going to take too much weight out and the back will stick up. I'm going about halfway down the hair because I want to remove a lot of bulk so when we style this, he can get a really messy textured look. All right, and now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now we're going to do a little bit in the back. So I want to stay from the pivot area right there. I'm just going to come across, I'm going to angle the comb out and come across this way. All right, so that's going to blend the back in. And we're going to do the same thing on the sides. So by lightening up a little bit like this, we're going to blend it to that underneath layer, which is just about long enough, just about grown out enough to get rid of the undercut. And we'll do the same thing on this side now. Okay, so now we've completed the top. So we went through the center, we layered through the center, and then we slightly rounded it down. We double checked and went through it scissor over comb, and then we did our scissor over comb on the sides, and then we repeated all those steps again with the thinning shears to give it all that texture because he has so much hair. And you'll see that really pop out when we style it. So now what we're going to do is we want to move on and we want to do a 1 to 2 finger taper because we want to leave this hair right into the parietal area and the occipital area. We want to leave that heavy enough so that lays down and blends with the top, and we want to just do a nice tapered outline to really make that haircut stand out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my detachable metal blade clipper, And I'm going to use a number 3.5 blade, which cuts the hair to 3.5 inches. And I'm just going to start a little bit of a light taper or fade around the edges. So very slowly, I want to use a scooping motion. So if you look at my posture, I'm still standing straight up. My shoulders are back. My work is a half an arm's length in front of me still. And I'm just using a scooping motion with my wrist. My elbow is still. The movement is coming from my shoulder and then my wrist. A very slow scooping motion, because with the metal blades, it will cut as you pull away from the head. And then when you're behind the ear, I have my finger protecting his ear. And I'm just going right over, so if I hit anything, I hit his finger. Unlike plastic attachments, if you hit the back of the ear with a metal blade, it will cut the ear. So you want to make sure that you protect the back of that ear. So now I want to bend his head forward. I want to come up at a 45-degree angle. I want to use a low scooping motion because I still have to blend this in. I want to leave myself room to do that without going up too high. And then we're following the contour and the shape of the head. So where it protrudes the farthest out and the lowest, we're just going to kind of dip down and follow the shape of the head. And if you have to go in different directions, you can see how his hair is growing this way and this way, so we have to come at different directions and straight up. Okay, I have my finger there, so I'm resting the clipper blade on the back of my finger, not his ear. And then we're going to come from the front and do the same thing. Okay, real easy. So then before we move on, I always want to take a clipper brush and brush off that clipper blade. I want to make sure it's nice and clean so when I use it on the next client, we don't get any hair on the next client. And then the other thing it does is, as I'm doing this, I always do it right in front of my current client so he knows that when I take a blade, it's clean, because I did that the last time. So now what I'm going to use is a 1.5 blade. So the 1.5 blade cuts and blends at the same time. So what I'm going to do with this is, as I blend this in and cut length, I'm going to start out with the heel of the blade on the comb. And as I work my way up, I'm going to start to pull the heel of the blade away from the comb. So what that does is it goes from cutting and blending to just blending. So that way we're not using blending shears on the side. I never like to use blending or thinning shears on the sides when hair's that short, because as it grows in, it makes the ends of the hair split out. It doesn't look natural. So we want to keep it looking as natural as possible, and it also helps us cut down on a step. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start my outline or my taper by tilting the clipper up and just using a really quick scooping motion around the edges. So we're going to do two things at once as we work our way around. So the heel of the blade is on there right now. I have the comb angled slightly. Then I'm going to slowly pull it away. And as I'm working my way up the side, I'm pulling the heel of the blade farther and farther away from the comb. So with that blonde hair, you could, if you just were to take an adjustable clipper, like this, and close it all the way down into a 3-0 position, there's no give, there's no forgiveness, you'd wind up with a lot of clipper marks. So if any of you are getting clipper marks or razor marks, That's why. We want to lengthen the teeth, we want a wider blade, and that's going to give us a nice soft cut, a nice blend. So as I said, I'm also going to start right over the sideburn area and tapering it down low. I'm holding the ear down. I'm coming from the back of the ear at a 45-degree angle. And that's starting our taper around the ear. And we're on the back hairline. And now as I work my way around, I pick up where I left off here, heel of the blade on the comb. And then once I feel myself start to lean too far to the side, I adjust my grip. Right now I'm using an overhand grip. The other type of grip is an underhand grip. So if your elbow's too high, you're leaning this way, you're out of balance, very easily switch to your underhand grip. Hand goes under the clipper, and then your body position, everything is back in alignment. And then your chair is an important tool also. If I were to keep going, if you see what happens, I'm starting to lean, I just turn the chair a little bit. And then my body's back in alignment. So whenever you feel yourself like you're leaning or you're getting out of place, just spin the chair or move your feet a half a step. All right, so before I get too far, now I'm going to start with the taper at the bottom. Now this can be referred to as two different things. A taper, or actually what I'm doing is more of a low natural hairline. So I'm not going up above the natural hairline under the occipital bone. I'm staying right at the natural hairline and fading it out. So I would call this a low natural hairline or a low natural taper. So now we're going to work our way around to the other side. And once you get your rhythm down, you don't even have to stop. So you start out with the heel of the blade on the comb, and then as you work your way up, you just tilt it away. So we do it all in one scoop. Now we're going to blend to the other side. So we're at this angle right here. So if you see from this angle, it's exactly what I said in the beginning of the haircut. We don't want to cut any of this hair underneath. We want to build that thickness underneath so this can eventually get a little longer and lay forward as we're letting this undercut grow out. So we never actually cut any of that hair. We're staying away from that. Now we're going to finish that bevel around the ear with the 1.5 blade and over the sideburns and through the temple area. So now we're going to brush that clipper off. So now what I'm going to do is switch to a finishing comb, a smaller comb, an adjustable clipper, and we're going to work on the semi-finish area. So we're going to further work on that taper and fade that out around the edges. So I have the lever opened all the way up so it's in the longest position. Then I close it down all the way and just get those few long hairs off the ears. Now I'm going to open it back up. And he's got a little bit of hair on his face, so while we're here, we're going to take care of that. And blend that right into the bottom, fade that right into the bottom of the sideburn. So basically what we're doing is we're doing a fade on the hairline instead of a fade, somewhere on the head, either in a mid fade or a high fade. We're basically doing the exact same thing. So we want to use that scooping motion. It comes from the wrist. Your elbow is still, your shoulder is still. Clipper's doing all the work. Then I'm going to close it halfway down and not go as high. Then I'm going to close it all the way down and not go as high again. So now we have a nice natural hairline. I'll do the same thing on the other side. And one of the things that I always teach is efficiency when you're working. So this is exactly how I do it. I always spin the chair. So I just work back and forth from one side to the other. I don't like to put a line in a haircut or make a line. I personally find it much easier to fade down, because if I don't put that line in, I don't have to blend it out. I've been saying that for 25 years. I'll be saying that for another 25. Now I'm going to open it back up and we're going to come around the ear. Now watch what happens when I pull that ear down. When I pull that ear down, that hair pops right out. So you can see exactly what to do. I'm going to take the back corner of the clipper and we're going to fade that right out. And the back corner of it, fade out that sideburn a little bit, fade out the bottom, and then get the fuzz off his face on this side. Okay, so now we're done with our adjustable clipper. The next thing I'm going to grab is my finisher. I like to use an outliner with a T-blade. So the nice thing about a T-blade is the blade comes out farther than the corners of the casing of the clipper. So that way it's much easier to get in and around the ears. Now these are very sharp, so a lot of times I'll just use the back of the clipper and just grab any loose ones or long ones left that we didn't get with the other clippers. It's not really necessary to take the corner of the clipper and really dig it in to try to get a real hard line. The clippers are sharp enough, you're going to get that anyway, so you want to be much more careful with that. Now this particular model likes his sideburns angled in a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll angle them in a little bit for him. Now I'm going to bend his head to the side, and since we already did the taper and everything, all we really have to do is very slowly clean up the hair on his neck. Natural hairline's already done. I want to stay away from it. I just want to get the fuzz off his neck. So these clippers are really sharp if you have a good trimmer, so you really don't have to press. I just very lightly glide it over the skin. I hold the weight of the clipper in my hand, and as I said, I'm pulling down on his skin. When I pull down on this towel, that stretches the skin out, that pops the hair out, and that's what's going to give you a nice close clean cut. And we're just going to work our way around to the other side and keep doing the same thing. And these clippers weren't made for any clipper over comb, so any clipper over comb you're going to do with your larger clipper or detachable blade clipper or your adjustable clipper. These are just for cleaning up the outlines, and they'll last you a really long time. Now same thing on this side. We want to pull the sideburns in a little bit. All right, so that pretty much completes the haircut, and we're going to move on to styling it now. Just want to make sure we have them brushed off. I've chosen our Zorian of New York shaping paste to use on our model's hair today for this particular style. Our product line is infused with all natural ingredients. It's made in the USA, and it's also not tested on animals, which is very important. The reason why I selected the shaping paste is because we want to have a dry look, and a really good strong paste is going to give it a dry look. And I was very fussy when I was having the product designed, so what I wanted out of the shaping paste was I wanted something that was going to have a really strong hold, no greasy feel or residue, and again, be able to hold all day. But I also wanted it to be so water soluble that it would rinse out with just water before the shampoo even hits your hair. So we were able to accomplish that. When we put it in, we have about 15 seconds, 20 seconds before it hardens up to style it. But again, it gives us a lot of hold. Also has a very light, clean fragrance, so it's not going to interfere with any colognes or deodorants, body sprays, or anything like that. So what I want to do is I want to take a good amount, about a full knuckle, right, like that. And also what I really like about this paste is it emulsifies in your hands really easily like a cream. So you don't have to heat it up like a cement or anything like that. And it's going to give us a lot of, again, a lot of hold. And we're just going to push it all forward, mess it up a little bit. You could use a pick or something like that if you wanted, but for this particular style and what we talked about before the haircut, this is what our model was going for today. Wanted to get rid of the undercut like we talked about in the beginning of the video, and wanted to have a lot of texture. And I think we've been able to accomplish that. And as I said, while we were doing the haircut, even though it looked like those sides might have been sticking out a little bit, the paste would pull it down, push them down, and pull the whole hairstyle right together here. So there we go. I'm going to spin them around a little bit so you can see what we have. And the nice thing that I wasn't sure about before the haircut is if we're going to be able to keep the back laying down because he has such a strong cowlick, but we were able to accomplish that. And we're able to accomplish getting the sides blended in. And then with that nice low taper, it really makes the top stand out. And again, that paste has enough hold. It's really going to last all day. And literally, once he steps in the shower with just water, it'll rinse right out before the shampoo even hits his hair. So no leftover greasy residue. All right, and that should do it. Thank you for watching the video today.